Good evening, everybody. Delighted. This is the sixth occasion we've done Thoughtful Thursday. They've been absolutely brilliant so far, but I suppose not. But they have been brilliant. But there's been a real hunger for something around coaching and management, and I couldn't think of two better guys we will have on tonight. Paddy Tally, first of all, Galbally native, County Tyrone, former Tyrone coach, Sigerson winning manager with St Mary's of Belfast, and current Down manager. Also, we have Stephen Robinson, originally from Lisburn, current Motherwell manager, played with Spurs, Preston, Bristol City and Luton Town, and probably for most notably with Bournemouth, 241 caps and 52 goals from midfield, not bad, and 7 Northern Ireland caps. So, lads, tonight I just want to, I suppose, start off by asking you guys, what does coaching and management mean to you? Paddy, maybe start with you. What when you first went into coaching, did you think that the pathway was going to lead to management? And what does the coaching management role, what does it mean to you?
Thanks, Oisín. Firstly, just delighted to be here tonight. Really looking forward to this event. Oisín, I suppose from my point of view, coaching was always something I was interested in from a quite an early age. I got involved with coaching my own club team, and then to working at third level with the St Mary's University Sigerson Cup team back in 1999-2000, and that led on into working with Tyrone 2003 at inter-county senior level, and I've been more or less working at that level since. But it was always at a coaching level, and I suppose the thing that appealed to me was could I use the experience I gained as a player and also from my professional background of just sports science and physical education, and could I apply it in a team environment and see could it improve the players I worked with. So it really was very much of an improvement. And I suppose the kick I got was from the teams that I started to work with, started to improve and do well and win things, win competitions. And that really then gave me a sort of a reason to keep pursuing it. So that kept me going, and I suppose whet the appetite until move towards that sort of happened as I suppose as a result of coaching for so long. You start thinking of other things you could do, and I always had an idea that at some stage I'd like to move into management. So it's been a sort of transitional phase. I probably realised that for a while that I needed to spend a lot of time coaching. I needed to spend a lot of years coaching before I stepped into management, because I really got to need to understand the role really, really well. And within that, you do a lot of analysis and you look at strength and conditioning, coaching, nutrition, advice, psychology. And then by that stage, you have a grasp on various elements you need to bring in, that when you do manage that you have a fear or a feel for the areas. So that's why I end up in where I'm at, watching really.
And is when you're with Down now, is there a tendency to want to get in and take a little bit off the coaches that are coaching, or is that a role that you fulfill anyway as a manager, or have you took a step back from that completely?
Well, I've had to take a step back simply because at the time we're so limited the amount of time we have with the players, and there's a lot of things have to be done in the management, and things of organisation and planning. That so I think it's been important that I did take a step back and put good people in place to help coach the team. A lot of the time it still comes down to coaching the game plan or setting up for games. I'll still take that part. When it comes to the training and the skill work and various aspects, I work alongside the coaches and advise and mentor maybe sometimes, but when it comes to the game plan, I feel that's where I have to really impose my thoughts on how we want to play, and if I don't, I have to do that. That's the responsibility I take on. But no, generally I've had to take my hands off that. It's not a bad thing to stand back and watch. It's also good to use your experience to help develop other coaches with you as well.
Good stuff, Paddy. Stephen, same question. Was it a natural progression for you to go into coaching and management, or was it something you seen for yourself whenever you played? Or did you find yourself when you were playing that you wanted to coach, you wanted to, you were very vocal, or, how did you find yourself in the position that you're in?
I certainly wasn't when I was playing. It wasn't something I really set out to do. You play, and unfortunately when you're young, you don't think too far ahead of yourself, and then I got an injury. I got a back injury. I told I wouldn't play football again numerous times, probably at 17. Then I got told again at 24. And that's probably when I started, edging towards the coaching side of things. So I was lucky enough to be playing international football at that stage, and we were fast tracked into the UEFA B license and A license. It was something that was an offer that pushed me in that direction. And then I gradually started to get a real taste for it. Started doing a little bit of coaching with Luton Town when I was coming towards the end of my career, just with the youth setup. And I probably done. It's funny. It's interesting listening to Paddy talk as well. About giving up the coaching to actually manage and having that confidence in yourself to allow other people to do it. I found that the hardest bit when I went from coaching to managing. But the way I went about it was probably different than most professional footballers. I went right back to the start. I moved back to Northern Ireland when I finished playing, and I coached from 12 to 16s. And I really learned my trade there, made mistakes that you don't get exposed to unless if you're working at the top level or working on TV, you get exposed to more. And it was more a little bit of trial and error. I don't think I was brilliant at it at the start, and it was just, I think the biggest thing with coaching is experience, getting grass time, getting on the pitch and making your mistakes with younger players. And what you do when you do it at that level is you learn the problems that your youth team manager has now, and you put yourself in them situations that perhaps if you get appointed straight away because your name or your reputation is, as happens a lot in football, then you miss them aspects of actually development. So I've done that for 3 or 4 years. I then moved into the senior setup with Michael O'Neill, and I moved to Motherwell as assistant manager. And it comes to stages, as Paddy mentioned, you sort of, you're doing it everybody else's way, and you're putting a lot of hours into it. And it comes to a stage where you want the decisions to be yours. And until you actually go from coaching to management, I don't think anybody realizes the difference in both roles. Everybody wants you, the final decisions with you, and the time that it consumes in your life and the pressure it puts you in your life from the difference between coaching and management is absolutely incredible. And I ended up having an opportunity after we qualified for the European Championships to go and manage League One in Oldham, who were a big club a long time ago. It was probably the worst decision of my career to go and do it, but probably got me to the stage I am now by learning by my mistakes. And it was a character building exercise in terms of management, and probably gave me a ruthless streak that I may not have had just from coaching alone. So I got offered the job within 3 weeks of being sacked at Oldham, become Motherwell's assistant manager. And within a week of becoming assistant manager, they sacked the manager, Mark McGee, at the time. And I ended up getting offered the job, and probably wasn't something I set out to do. It certainly wasn't something I went back to do, but the opportunity was there. And, it's a fantastic football club. And probably if it hadn't been Motherwell, I probably wouldn't have taken the job. I knew the people, they were good people, and probably the best bit of advice I can give anyone wanting to go from coaching to managing is make sure it's the right opportunity. I made the mistake. I was very, very lucky to get a second opportunity with good people, and I got back tremendously, which I still am right now. And then it gives you an opportunity to be successful and put your stamp on things and allow you to make mistakes, but know that you've got an unwavering support from the board. And I don't know if GAA is quite as ruthless as soccer. I think the lifespan now is less than a year, 9 months for a football manager. So I got lucky to have a second chance at it, and ended up a little bit through chance more than actually planning what I was going to do. And as I say, I'm in a brilliant position now, and with people that really believe in you, and in a position where we've sort of progressed the club forward throughout the last 5 years.
Stephen, I suppose myself and Paddy come from a GAA background, as you were saying there. Can you give us a bit of a snapshot of what your day is like and what it involves? Because before you come on here, I know you're trying to sign a player. You're probably responsible for budgets, and then you're organising the people around you as far as coaches. You're trying to deal with players. I don't know what I know some of your personnel, but I don't know if you have prima donnas in there, or you have. Usually you get there's a good mix in there. I'm just wondering, how do you when you take all those things into account, how do you organise your day?
I think I've got better as I've got more experience. I was trying to do absolutely everything at the start, and as I say, as Paddy done, you go from coaching to managing, and it's hard to actually let go of some of the day-to-day roles until you surround yourself with people you trust. And as I say, I've been given time to do that, and I've got a staff now, boys that had an identity to Motherwell, and it gave me a little bit of time to, when you're making mistakes, they've got an identity with the players and with the crowd. So I brought the captain of the club in with me as assistant manager, Keith Lasley, who's been fantastic for me, and also Maurice Ross, an ex-Rangers player, fantastic coach. And we've got Dermot O'Carroll as well, you know, he's been around in the Irish setup as well, football wise, and played Irish League and in Southern Ireland as well. So I've been able to surround myself with good people that I'm able to trust. I was able to get a strength and conditioning guy in from Middlesbrough who had the same ethos as me, had the same work ethic as me, and that's the one thing I've been able to do, is pass a lot of stuff on, although I do still find it difficult to not be around. I've got to be there every day. You know, my day starts probably, I get into the club around about 7:30, 8:15, and I make a point of going to the gym every day. It might not look like it at the moment, but I go to the gym every day for 45 minutes just to set your mind right, because from then on in, from 8:30 in the morning, probably through to, it was a wee bit later than usual today. As you say, I was trying to sign players, but from 8:30 through to around about 5, 6 o'clock on a normal training day, you're constant with, you know, putting training together. We have a meeting every morning at 9 o'clock where we go through the day. We have a weekly meeting where we go through the week and a weekly plan, but that does change on a daily basis in terms of personnel that's fit. In terms of, you know, we work off percentages through our strength and conditioning, how hard we work each day. We've got a set pattern throughout the week, how hard we work, and you know, sometimes you've got to tweak that depending on injuries, or, you know, a little bit of feedback from the older players that we would listen to. So we have that meeting every morning. We train from 10 o'clock. We start at 10. It'll be around about an hour, 45-minute session to 2 hours. They'll come back and they'll eat at the football club, which obviously in the COVID-19 era, we've only just been allowed to do again. And then they'll go back into the gym, or it will be a football session back on the pitch again. So you're around about 3, 4 o'clock by the time you're coming off the pitch or out of the gym. And then it's another couple of hours, and it can be anything. As you say, today I've only just got in. It can be, you know, my chief scout's based in England. A lot of our players do come from England, from the lower leagues, and, you know, I'll spend a couple of hours on the phone with him. You know, he'll come up once a week to meet as well. And then there'll be the chief executive will want an update on what's happened by the end of the day, and, you know, how everybody is, how the club is. And generally I'm very lucky. I take probably a lot on more than I should, because I run the football club from top to bottom, you know, and I think that's very unusual in football now. There's a lot of people that have different roles and they interfere, and at our club everybody knows their role, and I get a real leeway with things, including, you mentioned the budget. You know, I get given an amount of money. It isn't a great amount of money, but you know, in comparison to your Rangers and Celtics, but I get from every decision, I can bring 50 players in as long as it's within budget, or I can bring 5 in, you know, so nobody interferes in that in any shape or form. That brings its own pressure, of course. But, you know, from top to bottom, from the strength and conditioning, from the food that we eat, everything, I have a final say on absolutely everything at the football club. So it's important, and I've learned as I've got a little bit more experience that you can't do everything, and I've learned to pass, especially the coaching side of things, bar the main sessions of the tactical side of it. I try and pass that on, because I've really got a trusted staff. And yeah, it can be busy. There isn't loads of downtime, and if you let it will totally dominate your life. So I'm learning that you need to get to the gym before training, otherwise you never get the chance. Everybody wants a piece of the manager, and that's one of the biggest differences between coach and manager. No one wants to speak to the coach; they all want the manager, unfortunately.
And Stephen, that sounds pretty exhausting. But even between seasons, like, is there an opportunity, you know, for any downtime? Because I'm sure in the off season you're signing players again, and you're looking at things that tweak and change, and maybe staff are coming and going. Is there any gap in between?
There's that's probably why I'm getting divorced. There is none, you know. It genuinely is. It takes over your life. In Scotland, we only have 3-week break between the end of the season and the start, because they have a cup competition, the Betfred Cup. Now this year we're actually qualified for Europe, so it's going to be a little bit later. But obviously this year with the lockdown was the longest any of our players have ever had off. But in a usual season, you know, we have a turnaround of probably about 12 or 13 players every season. So you're constantly, we're usually 2 transfer windows ahead of ourselves, but there's obviously the deals that you do towards the end of the season, and you're constantly chasing people. As I said, we have one of the lowest budgets in the league. We're probably about in the second or third bottom budget in the league. So you have to be ahead of yourself. I probably spent more time speaking to my chief scout and my recruitment staff than I did do with my family at times. And it is a drain on your energy and your time. You get maybe a 10-day holiday, but most of that's spent on the phone, so there is a bit of a myth about footballers don't work that hard, but I have to say the staff do. And the problem is you do try and, I'm sure Paddy will probably agree with it, you do try and pass some of that stuff off, but the players want to speak to you. They want the reason why they're not in the team. They want to know, are they staying? They want to know why their money's less than the next person, because modern footballers speak way too much. The agents want to speak to you. The scouts want to speak to you. The chief executive wants to speak to you. So you have to, the biggest thing I'm learning is you have to be, at some stage you've got to shut off. Otherwise you dilute yourself completely. And as I say, I'm learning, bar tonight where we're still in the midst of trying to sign somebody. I try and switch off around about 6, 7 o'clock at night and not take any more phone calls and give yourself some time and give your family time, because I've probably learned the hard way that it can cost you a lot of things.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you later, just about self-care. But Paddy, if I can go back to you, but before I go back, folks, I've seen one of the questions popping up there. But if there's any questions, just stick them in the chat bar and we put them to the two guys. Paddy, the GAA, is it fair to say that yes, we're not professional, but that there's a huge amount of time now spent talking, dealing, communicating with players than maybe there ever has been? Or there's a huge need for it, I suppose, more so than there ever has been?
Yeah, I think it has, Oisín. I've noticed even in let's go back to 2000, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but it's 20 years past, and when you're at your prime and when you're coming to your prime, and but even around that time, I have seen a lot of advance. I got involved into County 11 2002, and things have changed a great deal since that. Now, I have to say that the benchmark was pretty high, and Armagh were one of the counties that set the benchmark very high in 2002 winning the All-Ireland. And I have to go by that. That was a team that really embraced a very professional attitude to preparation. And I think that was the catalyst for us in 2003 that we really had to really examine what we were doing in Tyrone. Because we watched our neighbours win the All-Ireland and we were behind the ball, which weren't at it. So really, I think what we did a lot at that time was embrace a lot more of the sports science and the stuff we need to be doing. But certainly to now, the game has changed an awful lot. The time that's required to work with players is demanding an awful lot. We're now embracing technology that was never probably there at the time. There's a lot more analysis now being done on teams. There's a lot more performance measures you have to have in terms of player load and train load and GPS data and stuff that we didn't have back that time. So that all takes time to break down and to work with as well. The players themselves are probably living very busy lives now at the moment as well. They're certainly the players have changed. The young player now is a different type of athlete than he would have been 20 years ago. They're much more into their training. I have to say that the guys now are probably a level up in terms of conditioning when it comes to gym conditioning and nutritional habits and everything. It's really, really improved an awful lot. And we have probably cherry-picked the best of what's going on in professional rugby, professional soccer, and other sports and adapted them to Gaelic games. So that does take time. I know from my role in the management point of view, we are dealing now not only with a team of players, you're also dealing with the backroom team, as Stephen talks about, your management coaching team, medical team, your analysts, everybody around it. You're dealing with your county board as well, making sure things are done pretty well. But it does take a bit of time, and you have to be able to give that time to it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to compete at that level.
Paddy, the culture in Down, like, I went to school in Newry, in the Abbey in Newry, and unfortunately for me, it was the 90s that I went to school there, and we were tortured with the Down teams of the old and how good they were, and they were brilliant teams. How has things changed, I suppose, for Down as far as their approach is concerned, and how do you go in there? How does Paddy Tally go in there and change the mindset and the culture?
Well, you're right, Oisín, because we were playing our football down where the Kingpins of Ulster winning 2 All-Irelands in the 90s, and we lost an All-Ireland final in 95 after Down had won it in 94 in Tyrone. So we sort of knew that we weren't able to finish to keep the Ulster dominance in the All-Irelands at that stage. And there would have been that in Down. There's no doubt. Like when I was coaching the Down team in 2010, we lost the All-Ireland final to Cork by a point. And that was the first ever time Down had ever lost a game in Croke Park, which was a hard one to take at the time for the Down people. But there was nearly like I remember that time thinking the Down people thinking we'll be back next year. You know, this is only a blip. We'll be back next year. This is 10 years on, and Down are trying to fight themselves out of Division 3. So something's happened in the meantime. Something's that's went on that meant for various reasons Down have been on a bit of a decline. So what we had to do last year, really, when I come in, was a complete clean out of everything that was going on. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. It was no reflection on the players or no reflection on the county board or the people there. It was just generally, I felt that it was 25 years since Down had won Ulster Championship, which is a long, long time to not even be competing. So I had to change a complete culture of what I felt that was needed. And probably the thing was to change the attitudes and the belief of the team and the players. You know, I'm a big believer that your values, your attitudes and beliefs develop your culture. And if you miss out on one of those things, your culture isn't what it should be. So we had to set a different set of values to what we were about as a team, how we were going to approach the players, how the players had to approach their training and to be better. We had to think about the beliefs and what we're trying to do, and we had to get the players to buy into that belief system. And when we got those things, you know, right, you know, we were starting to turn the wheel. It took a little time because it maybe took some, not to say harsh words, but certainly some maybe home truths to be brought through to where things were at that time. But I have to say the players have responded very, very well, and hopefully we can continue on an upward curve for the remainder of the league and the championship this year.
Paddy, when you say, you know, there had to be a clear out done, does that mean that some of the players don't fit the culture, so they have to go?
It wasn't as much as that, Oisín. I think it was when I talk about a clear out, there's basically getting and imposing what I felt was this team needed. And there's nothing miraculous in any team you work. I find is that if you're really, really honest about what you're doing, you work really hard with the players, put in place good systems that are robust and won't break down at the first hurdle. And you create that type of an environment for players feel safe to take risks. They feel safe to make mistakes, but they're rather than what I find with professional players or top level athletes is I find that sometimes they break very easily. If things aren't going particularly well, you know, if you don't have patience with them, you don't back them, support them to keep going and make the mistakes and learn from them, then they back off. So what we had to do really was a downward in place where a lot of the players hadn't had a great year or two before that, and the confidence was low. So what we had to do is put them in the positions where they were going to make mistakes, but when they were making them, you had to stand behind and say, go and do it again. Just do it again. I'm behind you. Don't be afraid to make it. We'll be here for you. We'll learn from it. We'll move on. And straight away, that changes everything. It changes everything in a young player, especially somebody that's maybe cutting their teeth at the first level, into county level. We started last year, we brought in 17 players, made their league debuts, and 13 made their championship debuts in 1 year. Now, that was just a complete change. I think there's 3 players remaining from the team that had played the championship the year before. So it was complete, you know, clear out of a new team. And it was a risky strategy, but it also was one we had to do because we felt we had to change everything that's going on and put trust in these young players to come through. Now, it'll take a few years, there's no doubt about it. It's not an overnight fix. But the Down County Board at the time when I met with them, they were very much in that line. They said, like, we understand where we are. This has to be a new start. But certainly the big thing I learned was that a player needs to feel as if, you know, if I make a mistake here, you know, I have somebody to back me up. I'm not going to be rattled out and support them. And it's amazing what you can do with a young player when he feels that way, that he feels it's okay. Not that you tolerate poor performances or bad effort, but you certainly have to feel as if there's support behind them. So I think that was one of the big things, that players weren't afraid to put the jersey on and play. And I think that's changed an awful lot of the mindset among the squad.
Yeah, no, because I interviewed Donald O'Hare for a paper a number of weeks ago, and he wasn't letting me away with anything because I had said that down on in a place where I didn't want to be. But then he made me realise that exactly the turnover of players there'd been since 2016. It's absolutely huge. I mean, it's very difficult and one of the things he said was the key to getting back up there and competing again was to keep guys together, and keep a squad together and keep try and continue with that continuity. I'm going to ask both of you this question. I'll just start with you when I have you, Paddy. The key to keeping the squad player happy. I think you go up and down the country, and I think it's when it comes to coaching and management, that's the question that keeps popping up for me. And do you know what? It's a question I don't have the solution to. But a guy who's a squad player, but he's not necessarily involved that often. He's not really playing. How do you keep him happy, Paddy? Tell us.
That's not an easy thing to do, Oisín, but I think honesty is the key. I have to say that I try and I always be honest with the players no matter what, but I also have to have a very set criteria as to why you will play on any given day. And if the player understands this is what is required of me, like a player could be in really, really good condition physically, could be actually playing pretty well, but might not start that next match. And he'll comment under why, but it just might be down to the fact that opposition don't suit you today. And that's something you have to have. Or there could be a player that's maybe just is we need a little more experience in the team, and you may draft somebody to do a particular job on a certain day who may come out of left field into the team. But again, he might just suit that opposition on the day. So it depends on. If I think I've made it very clear to the players from the start that there's a fixed criteria how to pick the squad. I pick the team. If there's a problem with that or the player has an issue with that, they're always able to come and speak to me about it. I'll give them my honest assessment. In the same way as a player is taken off in a game, I debrief every one of the players who's taken off and give them a very clear debrief as to why the changes were made. Sometimes it's because if he wasn't playing particularly well, the evidence is always there to back that up as some video analysis or statistical analysis. If it's a fact that I've made a tactical change because the game wasn't going a certain way, I'll always clear that up with the players too. And I think that, to be honest with you, has kept that issue away from my door. To be honest with you, I haven't had really too many players that have come to me and said, with not being happy with where they are. The other thing is they're all getting their chances. They do is give as many players opportunities. With the National League, it's been great. You have 7 games in the National League. You can really play most of your squad in that National League. If you have a lad, I do find is that when you already have an extended squad, I'd rather have 6 players, say from number 24 to 30. I'd rather have 6 under 20s or under 21s filling those 6 places rather than 6 boys in their late 20s. If I felt they couldn't cut it at that age, I probably wouldn't have them around it. I'd rather have 6 young boys that are in there learning their trade, seeing what's going on, and in a year or two, and tell them from the start, listen, you don't know your chance is going to come. You got to work hard. You're young, but you got to learn when you're here, and you will get your chance. And if their attitude's right there and they work hard enough, they will get the crack at it. So I think that's a matter of keeping those last half of those squad players you talk about. I'd always have those have been young players that you wanted to supposed to develop as young players, but also you want to put the right attitude into them from the start and build the culture, the type of culture you want around the squad. So that's how I manage it. But it's not an easy thing, and I feel like Stephen is different because these guys are getting paid weekly, and our guys are amateurs. And I remember years ago, spending a few weeks with Mark McCall, the time he was also rugby back early. Must have been in the mid-90s or whatever, or maybe 2000, mid-2000s, he was also a rugby coach. And at one of his training sessions, I remember observing the first team training, and they were all going through the tactical stuff for the game on the Friday night. He had now a bunch of guys doing conditioning work, and then on the other end of the field, he had 6 boys just raffled into tackle bags. And I just asked him, what are those 6 guys doing? He says, those are the guys that are out of contract at the end of the year, and they've got to turn up and train. And I thought to myself, that's professional sports. It's ruthless. He said, they're going. They know they're going. There's no place for them here, but they have to wait and do the work or else they don't get paid. And I thought it's something that was different to what we have in the GAA. That would never happen there because there isn't the contractual thing, or there's not the financial aspect too involved. But it's just an eye opener too as to how professional sports manage those type of players. And professional sport, as Stephen talked about, is probably more ruthless than we have in the GAA.
Thanks, Paddy. Stevens, same question. How do you keep all those boys you have on? How do you keep them all happy?
You don't,
especially you don't.
That's the problem. I think what Paddy said, honesty is the best thing. I try and be honest with every single one of them, and sometimes they don't want to hear it, so they all crave honesty. And when you sit them down and explain your reasons for why you've picked them, they don't. As soon as they hear they're not playing, they're not listening anymore. But over time, I think you build a trust with people and a squad of players. And I remember going to the European Championships in 2016, and we took, I think it was a 24-man squad, and obviously only 11 players can start, and Michael picked the majority of the same players for most of the games. So you had probably 10 players that knew really they weren't going to start, and they're away from their families for 6 weeks, albeit in unbelievable surroundings. But the key to the success with the Northern Ireland squad was the players that weren't playing. Keeping those boys happy and making them feel valued and important, as the Gareth McCauley's, the Johnny Evans, the boys that were playing and getting the headlines. And we created an incredible team spirit by treating everybody the same. And I think I've taken that into club football. I treat my 18-year-old the same as I treat my captain. And, I don't treat them any differently. If they're playing well, Paddy spoke about it briefly, I set parameters to every position at the start of the season, and we give them a percentage and for example, a fullback, we want to run 12.5k in a game. A centre forward, we maybe want to run 13k, and a centre half maybe 10. And we want them to do a certain amount of high intensity sprints, all based on the GPS. And what I do, I say to them, don't knock on my door, do not come on my door if you're not running over that, because that's the basics, the free stuff in football. If you're not fit enough, you're not strong enough, then don't knock on my door. And if they're knocking on my door, they've got probably usually a genuine reason. And when you sit down and explain to them, some of them listen to you. I think society's changed completely. I went from giving lots of information to players, and then they went away, they twist it in their minds, they go back to their agents, they go, probably the big thing you don't suffer with in GAA is agents, I wouldn't imagine. So the agents tell them they're the best thing since sliced bread. They've never made a mistake in their life, and they should be playing. Their mum and dad tell them they're the best player in the world, and they should be playing. So you're actually the only person that tells them the truth. And sometimes you think, is it just our level? Is it just the SPL? But I was lucky enough to go to a seminar with Pep Guardiola, and there was him and 40 people, and we got to ask him questions. And it's strange that he has the exact same problems. So it doesn't matter if they're on £100,000 a week or £1,000 a week or £100 a week. Egos are huge, and I think managing their egos and giving them reasons and not embarrassing them in front of people is something I've tried to do. And as I say, treat the captain the same way I treat the 18-year-old. And what I do now when I'm dropping somebody or leaving them out of the team, I give them a brief reason, and then I tell them to come and see me again on Monday when there's no emotions involved, when they're not really disappointed on the Friday before the game. And then you can have a proper chat and back it up with analysis, as Paddy spoke about. So, I had an example last season where we were doing very well. We were third in the league. I had a striker come to me saying that, he never had any chances. We never created any chances when he played in the team, and it was everybody else's fault but his. Now, lucky enough, I was quite primed for it to happen, and we put a footage of 4 minutes of chances that he had when he played, and 30 of his shots had gone over the crossbar. We said, first and foremost, you've got to start looking at yourself. You've 30 shots, and 24 of them went over the crossbar. So, we took out the excuses, and the biggest thing I try and deal in is facts. If they've not met the standards we've asked for, if they've not run as far in training as we've asked, if they've not competed as well as we had, or they've been injured or missed days training, I don't let them. I don't even give them any kind of time. I say, no, there's no reason for you to knock on my door. You've not trained hard enough, and here's the stats to back it up. Here's the footage to back it up. And I've found over time, stats are better, and statistics and actually showing them the reasons why are better, because if it's just you and him, and you're saying, well, I'm not playing you for this and this, they think it's a personal thing against them. And as I say, they go away, and their parents will tell them they should be playing, and their agents will tell them they should be playing, their girlfriends, their wives, their boyfriends, whatever it is. They all tell them things that aren't true. And, I think now in a society that we live in, for me, it's a little bit of a snowflake society where they really struggle to take criticism, especially in soccer. They struggle with any kind of criticism, and the first time that they don't get in the team, they're wanting to give up. And I quickly surround myself with boys that aren't like that, and we've managed to create a culture, an environment at Motherwell where boys are quite resilient, and we've brought that through by bringing our own youth boys through who are used to that. They're used to the intensity we train at. They're used to the standards we set, and Motherwell's made up of a lot of young players who've come through the academy. So the expectations aren't as high. Everything isn't given to them. We find that the boys we bring up from Premier League clubs are a completely different kettle of fish. They have everything given to them. They might be on, ridiculous amounts of money, £10,000 a week at 17 and 18 years of age. And it creates a monster. It creates players that have never been told they aren't good enough. They've never been told it's their fault. They have not done the things. And what we've created is an environment where excuses are out the window. We are training. We're the fittest team in the league. I would argue with anybody. We've got the best strength and conditioning in the SPL, in my opinion. And we've got a coaching staff that really create an environment to make people better if they want to do it. And if they don't want to do it, we drift them up. We literally get rid of them very, very quickly. And I have, through time now, and the staff, we don't have as many problems because we've recruited and had time to recruit those people that want to be here, that want to learn, a real learning environment. And when they're not in the team, of course, they're upset, but they come back with an attitude of, well, you know what, I'll prove you wrong. Take what you've said and I'll come back a little bit stronger mentally. And that's not the case throughout football. I think we've got a unique place at this moment in time at Motherwell.
Brilliant, Stephen. That centre forward that keeps kicking the ball over the bar. If he happens to be from Armagh, we'll sign him up gladly.
He's in the wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah. Stephen, just to follow on from that, the problem child. How do you deal with him? Sorry, I know there's a couple of questions. I'll come to them directly after this. But the problem child, the guy who. So is he cut adrift? Is it as rootless as that, or?
I think you have to. I mean, I took over. It's very similar. Listen to Paddy's story about when he took over. I took over a team that was bottom of the league, second bottom, of the league. They'd conceded 30 goals in 10 games, and we had a real aging playing staff. Unfortunately for me, the aging playing staff were legends at the football club. So we had brilliant people like James McFadden, Stephen Pearson, Keith Lasley, who had mentioned, who's now my assistant manager. And they were all over 32 years of age. But they all were massive heroes to the Motherwell fans. So I couldn't be as ruthless as I wanted to because we were bottom of the league. I needed to use players and get the best out of them for a 12-week period to stay up. And we'd done that. We managed to stay up. And then it was a case of, mine wasn't because they were problems. My reason for getting rid of people and making them, moving them into different roles, so to speak, in a lot of cases, was that I thought their best days were behind them. And that was a real difficult decision because we're so popular, we're fans. And the reality is, had it not worked for me, and had we not had instant success, I probably would have been sacked within months. And lucky for me, we got the 2 cup finals in my first full season. Unfortunately beat by Celtic in both of them, but that was understandable considering how good they were. So I was able to change. We had one player who, I won't mention his name, but anybody from a football background or soccer background will maybe know who I'm talking about. He was somebody who had come from a big club. He thought he was better than our football club. He was doing his coaching badges, so he knew everything. But he was probably, arguably, my best player to keep me up. And it was a case of using him to get him to a stage that we stayed up. And then I had to, he had to leave the football club, and it was on my terms. It was me or him, and I give that ultimatum to the board. So, yeah, it is ruthless. And I think my lesson from when I was at Oldham, I wasn't ruthless enough. I give people too many opportunities, but learned very quickly, if there's one guy in the dressing room who's he's bad mouthing everything that he's a negative and he's a drain, I think you get people that are energy givers, and there's people that are drainers, and we had a couple of them, not just that one individual. We had a couple of them, and it was a point of, I have to get rid of you. You're draining everybody else around you. We were coming into training, he was finding fault with everything. He was bad mouthing the coaching staff. He was having an influence in the dressing room because of how high a level he had played. So it was a case of, he had to go. Now, because of contracts, and and money, it isn't quite as easy as it sounds. You have to, we have to get people out. We actually had to pay them up in the end to go. And it's been the case. I've only probably 2 or 3 occasions throughout the 5-year spell I've been here that I've had to do it. Another boy who wasn't a bad egg, so to speak. He was quite a nice kid. He was a nice boy, but his work ethic was poor. He had a massive influence on the dressing room. I don't know how, but he did. And he was bringing people into that culture. So I pulled him and I just said, look, you can't be part of what I'm doing. Your work ethic's not good enough. And I'd done it quite honestly. And it was, a degree of honesty from me to him, saying, look, you're going to waste the next 2 years of your career. You're not going to play for me. You can't get to the levels I want. And I think it's best for both of us to go. Now, again, in football, we had to pay him to go. It wasn't his full money, but we had to pay him to go. But I think it was so important that we had to get rid of those people that were bringing the culture down and surround yourself with the young kids who we have in the team. We've got a kid called Alan Campbell, he came through the ranks at 16, 17. I give him his debut. He's now played nearly 200 games. He'll get a Scotland cap very soon, and he'll probably go to bigger clubs in Motherwell. But he's in the club. I'm in at 7:30. He's in at 8 o'clock. He's the last person to leave. And that's the type of boys that we get everybody to look up to. And he really is a leader. And we've got now probably a group of 10 players out of the 20 that they lead it. I don't have to do it anymore. We don't have to put specific gym sessions. And I think, you asked me about the problem player. I think the more people you have like that, they do your job for you half the time. They drive the standards in training. They drive the culture off the football club. We ban mobile phones within the football club, which went down really well with the players. And all of a sudden, all their wives were pregnant and girlfriends were pregnant. And they needed their mobile phones, but we stuck to that, and it was unpopular. We made them all travel together in a bus, a minibus, which wasn't a great minibus. But instead of them going in 1s and 2s, and you had the older players together, you had the Irish boys together, you had the coloured lads together, you had the foreign boys together, and the older boys together. So there was never a togetherness. So we made sure we split that up straight away. And you only need one person bad mouthing things to get it wrong. So it's the biggest thing I can say. If there's somebody like that in the group, they have to go, and you have to be ruthless with it.
Brilliant, Paddy. Slightly different. In GAA, in that a lot of times, especially maybe not so much county, but a lot of times that guy in the clubs is usually the best player, and you're just trying to do anything to hold on to him. And I know from my own human nature that I've gone into clubs before, and somebody said this guy is a problem. You need to weed him out, and I always think, nah, I can change him. I'll be the one to change him, and I might change him for 6 weeks, but long term proves to be a problem. So how do you deal with that, Paddy, and within GAA?
Well, I think you have to make the team much more bigger than the individual. That's the first thing. I think that the minute that the player feels that he's above anybody else in the group, then really you're in a hiding to nothing. So that's a prerequisite in any successful team. There has to be a respect among each other, that they're all there for the same purpose. Of course, you get the talented guy that dealing with talented players that are slightly difficult. There's a way with them. Now, lucky enough, I haven't really had too many problems with that so far. Maybe it's the fact that I haven't had that many talented players, but I've had a few guys there that would be characters as such, and they would be a wee bit different. But I also feel there's a way around these guys that you have to get to their level as well. Look, lucky enough. What I did a few years ago I thought was really good. It was a guy that I knew that I had seen coming through. There's a talented young lad, and he's extremely well conditioned. I wouldn't say arrogant, very, very confident in his ability, which was great. He's coming from that background, but had a lack of social awareness and a wee lack of emotional intelligence. He didn't actually read people particularly well. He was seen as a prick. Sorry, pardon the language, but the guys, a lot of the people didn't warm to him because of his confidence. And really, in the first while with that young fella, it was because he didn't really see it. He didn't understand how other people saw him. What did happen with him over time is he became really targeted by other people within the group and on other teams as well. And by the time he had matured a little, I threw responsibility straight at him and made him a captain of the team. And it was amazing the transformation that had happened. He took all the batter and then handed him responsibility. So you really got him to the stage where he had learned an awful lot from the way he was behaving and made him feel a certain way. But then once he took responsibility, he knew that he had to start living up to the expectations of the group, and he thrived on it. Now, I've seen him moving on since that there, going on to and playing, even doing really well. But that couple of years where he was a captain of the team I was with, he was exceptional. And the strange thing is that it worked for him. Now, I remember one of his previous coaches said to me, I couldn't understand why he made him the captain, but my feeling was he's that arrogant and he's that confident in himself and he's that driven that he will not want everybody to see him failing. He'll not want to be seen as the one that doesn't do the work because it would look bad for him. And it worked. He responded really, really well. But it's different in the GAA. We don't have, this guy was, this is elite level football GAA, so the probably thing at county level is Oisín, you know that if you don't really want to do it, you'll not be there too long either. Like, you know, you'll be told it's not for you. So we do have that power to the county level because there's always somebody else to step up to it. At club level, it can be quite different. You have to make the most of what you have. And I do sometimes find that and I don't envy club managers knowing they deal with a certain type of player within the club that does that. And I think it probably just has to go back to this. The team has to be some of the parts, and nobody can be seen above that. The other thing is too that as a manager, you got to be a step ahead. You probably got to be thinking that wee bit ahead, so you can't be caught out by a certain player. You got to have your background work done on them. You have to make sure that he or she is that you're aware of what's going on behind the scenes. So sometimes a wee bit of investigating into the background of what's going on with them, what their life is away from the pitch, maybe having conversations with other people that know them. I do. And you find out an awful lot of things. And sometimes you find out, listen, it's not this particular individual's fault. There's something else going on here that you have to address as well. So it does take a little bit of work, but thankfully it works. When you do that, it can work to your advantage.
Well, it's just a question on the chat bar for both of you. So start with you, Paddy. Do top-level managers, head coaches still embrace a coaching philosophy, or has pressure of instant success meant that it's only a concept in lower-level amateur sport?
You have to have a coaching philosophy. I would be a big believer in it. I think your philosophy changes over time. I think experience is a great thing. I think you learn an awful lot from what you do. As long as you're prepared to reflect on your own performance and take responsibility for the things that go well. Also, take responsibility if things don't go well. Don't trust somebody else. And be that type of person that's there at all times and getting the work done. But I certainly believe that you have to have a philosophy, and it has to be based on we call it in teaching is a personal practical philosophy. That you have to have a personal practical philosophy that you can live and die by, something that's robust and stands strong. You build that over time. You probably tried and tested. Stephen mentioned about the fact he went to Oldham and he learned a hard lesson, but he became back stronger from that. And we all do that in coaching. We all look back at the things we missed out on, but those are the things that will make you stronger, provided you don't walk away from it and you drive on. But I have to have that philosophy, and that philosophy really goes back to your values. It really goes back to your values and beliefs and the culture that you want to impart onto the players you have and the coaches around you. And if you can do that, I think it's never that far away. And I do feel our game has moved on, especially at top level Gaelic football. It's moved on now to a position now where tactics and tactical knowledge and tactical awareness is a much, much greater part of winning games. A lot of the games now are won on the line. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I do mean that managers now have a lot more to do. Generally, teams that win big games, a lot of it can look down to what's happening on the line. And I don't mean that in terms of the switches they make in the game. It's actually the work that's been done long before that, but also what's happening on the line now. So we got to be way ahead of the game, but probably tactically we got to be a lot better. And that's part of my suppose the biggest change I've had from coaching to management is that tactically I had to improve an awful lot, and I had to think an awful lot about that end of the game. So that builds a big part of my philosophy.
Stephen, same question. I don't know if you heard that, but do you want me to read it again?
No. I mean, it's funny. It's probably the most common question I get asked from the media over here. You've completely changed your philosophy. 5 years altogether, but 3.5 years as manager, which isn't really true. I've always had a way I wanted to play, but I realised, Paddy mentioned when I went to Oldham, I tried to do it. I didn't have the players to implement my philosophy. I didn't have the time to implement my philosophy. So when I took the Motherwell job, my first thing was to get longevity, because I don't think you can put any philosophy in place if you don't have any longevity. It takes time, and in football you don't get time. So I was able to recruit, according to my budget, I was able to recruit big, strong athletes who could run. And for me to now play total football and play out from the back and get midfielders receiving the ball in the first season that I was here, as my first full season, it was impossible. So what I done was I played a certain way. It was still, the principles were still the same. We pressed high up the pitch. We put a lot of balls into the box. But we had two big centre forwards. We did play a little bit longer, but we played to people's strengths. And as I say, we were able to get the 2 cup finals, which then allowed me the longevity and the time to put my stamp on things and recruit the players that I wanted in to play a certain way, and a certain character to implement that in the team. So it's taken me 3 years to get where I am. Probably the last season, the second season, the second half of the second season, I was able to implement it. We played a lot of good football. We introduced a real core of young boys. And if you looked at the team, it would have been, energetic, inventive, really work hard and press high up the pitch, loads of pace in the team. But that wasn't instant. I wasn't able to do that at the start. So now in the last season where we finished third and qualified for the Europa League, we were able to recruit the way we wanted to implement our philosophy and the characters and the pace in the team that we craved to have. So it's okay having a philosophy, in my opinion, but in football it's a little bit different. A lot of managers don't get the chance to implement their philosophy because you have to be practical. There has to be a practical side to it as well. You have to stay in the job long enough to implement it, and especially in football, as it being so cutthroat. So, and I remember speaking to Brendan, and Brendan said, but you'll get bigger jobs and better jobs if you keep your philosophy and you keep sticking to what you do. And that was always where I wanted to get to, which we've got to now. And, I think we've got a good reputation for good young players. We sell a lot of players and, we play a certain style of football that's really attractive on the eye. But that took time. It took time, and my philosophy didn't change. But to actually get to where I wanted to be, I had to tweak a lot of things according to the personnel. I think a good manager plays to the strengths of his players. And my philosophy had to be tweaked to the strengths of the players until I got to the stage where we are now.
So basically what you're saying, Stephen, is be careful when you implement your philosophy because you could be doing it from the dole queue.
Yeah, in football, definitely. In football, 100%. I look at, those are in, got the soccer background, Neil McCann, who played at Rangers, he managed Dundee, and his team played brilliant football. And at the time, he probably would admit, he didn't have the players to play exactly how he wanted, and he got sacked, and he hasn't been in football since, which is a shame because, he had such great ideas and he wanted to implement it. And, I think I learned that early on was I can't play exactly the way I want from the start because you might not get the time to actually get there. So, getting longevity and reinventing yourself is something in football I think you've got to do on a constant basis.
Lads, just one more from Les here. How has lockdown changed your management coaching style? Is there anything different? Was there anything you reflected on and thought, I'm gonna change that, or has it sort of maintained exactly what it was?
Well, we're back now. Not really. No, what it done was give me a lot of time to recruit people. We've managed to sign 5 players already, and again, that fit into the way we play. You're able to do a lot. We've got a system called Y Scout, which you can see every player in the world and you can watch it. You might as well be at games now. It's that accurate and the quality of it. So, you don't actually need to be at games to scout players anymore. Done a lot of digging on people's personalities, and when we sign players, we probably do. We've only got a certain pool of players we're able to sign at Motherwell because of the finances and people that want to come up to Scotland from England. So we do a lot of background checking on them. We do a lot of digging into their personalities and their history. So I spent a lot of time doing that on the boys that I didn't know, and making sure they fitted into that learning culture that we've tried to create. But I actually took a complete break for about 6 weeks. So when it went into lockdown, from 15 years of age, from playing football to going into management, from coaching 24 hours a day, I actually switched off completely for 6 weeks, and I've got a renewed energy about me, if I'm being honest, and a real freshness about it. So it's important, I think, to do that as well.
Brilliant. Maybe just as important as tweaking things. Paddy, what would you lockdown? Have you reflected on anything? You've probably reflected on a lot of things, but football-wise, have you reflected on anything and thought, when I get back, I'm going to change that? Because of course, you aren't back yet.
Actually, we aren't back yet. That's you know, somebody said, you be careful who you pick your fights with. That's one. That's a fight I was never going to win. So we're not back. But we'll say nothing. No, actually, all right, we'll say nothing. But basically, no. During the lockdown, we were actually told to start. We finished on the week before St. Paddy's around that Thursday night, and we were told we would possibly be back in May. So for the first 4 or 5 weeks, the lads were putting a lot of work in by themselves. We were setting into the programs and they're sending the stuff in. And with the GPS and remote GPS and all, it's great now, so you can see what the guys are doing. But then after we realised this isn't going to happen for a few months, we didn't know where we were going to be really until this last wee while. To be honest, we backed off the players completely and just let them follow a program that we sent them on a weekly program, but just do it in your own time and do your best you can. We had to consider the situation players are in at home, what their home life is like, access to training facilities, access to time. We didn't know what their work or situation was going to be like, or family. So we really had to be careful how we dealt with the players at that time. And really, to be honest, not knowing we were going to get back playing, I weren't sure to get back playing. Really, there was a time when you did use to switch off, and I agree with Stephen. I actually did for a while. I switched off and I stopped thinking too much about it. Didn't do any analysis. Didn't watch games, didn't think too much, because really, I suppose my work was busy at that time. We were coming to the end of our academic year and we were under a fair bit of work to get the work finished up in the university. So that gave me a wee bit of space and time to get finished. But really, when we sort of, the words come back, we're going back in mid-September, back training again and getting ready for the resumption of the league and then the championship. You start thinking about your game again. So over the next few while, I will do a little bit more. But I suppose it's not really an awful lot, Oisín, to be honest with you. I haven't changed enough of what I'm going to do. I've done a wee bit of reading over the time. I've looked at a bit of stuff that I didn't get a chance to read, probably. That because you're really busy, you don't get a chance to sit down and read and do a bit of just digesting some information. So I've done a little bit of stuff on that. But it'll be, once we get closer to the time, we'll put the head back down and get you working, because we really aren't back to mid-September, which is a fair bit away yet. Like.
I was only joking, Paddy. I know he's not back. It's only Armagh that's back.
Are they really? Actually, are they really?
no, don't put me in that. Like, Geese will be ringing me in the morning.
Hey, what do you mean back? What do you mean back, Oisín? Back? We're never away.
I don't think so. Lads, there's a couple more questions. Eamon, that sounds like a loaded question. We might come back to that if we have time. Justin Donnelly, I'm curious to know whether the constant scrutiny and analysis by the media and pundits, with the exception of me, has meant that the athletes and players are afraid to make mistakes, and consequently the joy and fun leaves the game a little bit.
I'll start. Well, Stephen's probably. I'll start with ours. Our media can be very positive, but it also can be very scathing in the media, and I think it's quite unfair. I do. It's something we have to get our players ready for. We do work with the players to prepare them for media. It's something I've learned over the years. Go back over this last 20 years, I've seen how the media can really affect a young athlete, a young player. Now, really remember, our guys are amateur players. They're not getting paid to play. They're not getting anything for this. Only the pride of playing for their county and putting the jersey on and representing their club and representing their parish and representing their county. So really, it's very, very difficult when you do see the national media, whether it's on television or whether it's in the press, having a rip at a player. I think it's very, very hard. And I do feel that when I look at the soccer players, sometimes I wonder how do they deal with that on a weekly basis because of the scrutiny they're under. But certainly we would do a little bit of work getting prepared for it, and that they need to know how to handle the media. It's a big part of the modern day game, but it certainly can have an adverse effect on a young player.
Paddy, sorry, is there guys you keep away from the media? Is there guys who you would say to, listen, you're not just ready yet, or do you let, as a carte blanche, do you let everybody have a go at the media, and is it trial and error, or what way do you work with that?
I would never say to a player you can't speak to the media. I think I'd be wrong with me, and I really mean that. If a player's contacted by somebody to speak to the media, then they should know. They're mature enough to know, what to be saying. I'm not saying don't tell the secrets, but what I mean to say is they're responsible young men, and you'd like to think that they'd be responsible enough to deal with that. I think it's good. It's character building for them too. you know, if they're able to deal with people, it'll build up the communication skills. They'll read over it and see what's felt by it. And if they do see something that they can be pulled on, then maybe they can probably get a bit more stick from the rest of the players in the change room than I would. I certainly wouldn't be blocking them off that. And I think it's important that they're able to handle that into their lives, because it's part of what they are, like, you know.
The best lesson I ever learned was one of the first media interviews I did was that the guy who was doing the interview with, who I will never ever forget and never ever forgive, but he told me that the last part of it was off the record, and we were playing Tyrone. I think it was 96. The day that Matty McLean scored a goal in Oma, might have been even 97, and he talked to me about me playing corner forward, and he asked me what I thought of the Tyrone full back line, and I was honest, but this was supposedly off the record. I told him that I didn't think that much of them. I thought we'd be fine, and the headline in the paper the morning going to the match was the Tyrone full back line is very dodgy, and I learned from that. And you know what? If I hadn't learned that lesson early on, you know, and to be honest, rather than being wary of the media, I sort of embraced it a little bit more. But I knew that when somebody said to me it was off the record, it wasn't necessarily off the record. But it was just I just thought for me it was a lesson. It was quite a good lesson to learn early on, you know. But Stephen, I suppose when Paddy's talking about scrutiny,
didn't do any harm watching it. Probably over. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But Stephen, when you're talking about scrutiny, I mean, you guys are under huge scrutiny, not just, you know, coaches and managers, but players and just the game in general. I mean, Jesus, like the amount of reading and writing that's done about football now it's gone through the roof. Don't have the print media anymore, but you've got Sky. You've also got you've got so many media outlets. You've got social media. You've got all of those things. How do you guys cope with scrutiny?
It's probably the biggest thing that's changed in football is, I mean, Glasgow's a goldfish bowl. You know, there's something like 8 or 9 national newspapers in Scotland. It's one of the biggest press, you know, organisations in the world. So they have to fill newspapers. There's 7 or 8 pages of sport every day. So, you know, you go out of the house, your life's not your own, to be honest with you, you know, and it is difficult. But Glasgow is, I think, an exception. It's even more scrutiny in Glasgow because there's so many football clubs in one area. You're recognised everywhere you go. If you go out to a shop, you go out to Sainsbury's, anywhere you go. I mean, if you go for a glass of wine, it's people are looking for stories. You know, they've got their mobile phones out, as you mentioned, social media now. Somebody putting a picture of you in a restaurant drinking a glass of wine, you're then an alcoholic. So it does make you, as a manager now, me and my partner Robin, we're really, really worried where we go and what we do, and you know, we've learned just to live with that now, that the publicity that comes with it. In terms of the players, I warn them every year that we've got 3 guys who run our media department, and they're excellent, and they've worked in the media, so they know all the pitfalls, and our boys are advised on it. They do media training. I mean, I have 2 press conferences a week with you've got Sky and you've got your broadcasters, then you've got your newspapers, then you've got your Sunday newspapers, and then you've got the own club media. So it's constant, you know, and it takes up so much time, and they're constantly watching to see what you say. Can they make a headline out of anything that you say? That gets absolutely twisted. So you're constantly on your guard, and what I've learned to do is waffle for a long time without giving them a single bit of information. And genuinely it is, and it's probably the first thing in media training you learn is keep talking, but actually don't tell them anything. And they know they're not going to get much out of me, but players aren't quite as experienced as that, and you know, we sometimes we dread, you know, they demand certain players, and we have to let each player speak, but we try and manage it, and we have a media officer who guides them and, you know, tries to prep them on questions. But there's been headlines all over. Listen, I've had my own personal ones as well, and there's been plenty about one of our players. So we have, in Scotland, the laws are a little bit different on COVID-19 than Belfast and England. It's all a little bit different, so it's quite confusing. One of our boys had 2 people around the house Now they were doing, one of them came around every day to do gym work, so he was the house that they had the bubble with, and there was 2 other boys that were around. They were in the garden. There was 4 of them in the house. They weren't drinking. They had music on. The next thing, it's on the the front page of the paper, and it was an absolute nothing story. And we actually had people phone in the football club and write to the football club and say, look, it's a load of rubbish. They live in our street. They're good boys. They weren't drinking. There was nothing at all. But I think we live in a world that everybody pretends they care, but they're desperately trying to catch you out. And if you're a name and it sells stories, you've got to be so careful. And it's probably the biggest pitfall of being a manager in a high profile league where you've got Rangers and Celtic. And I probably noticed that when we beat Rangers in the semi-final, we had controversy against Celtic when we got the 2 cup finals. We had men sent off, and it was big news over here in every newspaper. And then all of a sudden, your life changes. You're going places, and people recognise you everywhere you go. You're going to restaurants. They're staring at you. They're making comments. They're shouting things over at you that aren't too nice when you're in the media. So it's just something that I won't miss. I certainly won't miss that when you come out of it. But it's now the modern way of sport. I think every professional sports now is your life's not your own at times if you go out. But for the good things you get from it and the lifestyle it gives you, I think it's a sacrifice you have to pay, unfortunately.
Well, as we're coming near the end, I don't actually know where that time went, but we're coming near the end. But there's one thing I want to definitely touch on that a lot of people I think are interested are on here and will be watching this back. When I go coaching and I go management, I have a bit of a drive home, and what I learned was that whatever has gone on, I need to get that out of my system before I walk back into the house. My wife has zero interest in football, zero interest. And I suppose I could be in the house, I could be playing, as far as I'm concerned, huge match, championship match. It might take her 4 hours before she asks me, did we win? So, I understand where that is. She wants to see me doing well, all those sort of things. But I understand where that is in line of priorities. My kids are fairly young. I've one guy now who is obsessed with football. But as far as the kids are concerned, I mean, do you know what I mean? They don't really know what's after going on or why is dad coming into the house in bad form. So I have a certain amount of time, 20 minutes, a half an hour. I'll get my thoughts around that, get into the house, and perk up and try and be in as good a form for them as I can, knowing that we're after missing a last minute chance to win the game or something like that. And what I want to ask is, where does the support come from? Because this is something you never hear, but where does the support come from for the coach and the manager, in particular probably the manager? Because when you're manager, it's you that carries the burden of the loss as much as anybody, even more so than players. So where does the support come from? And, Stephen, I know you talked about self-care as in, you get to the gym for 45 minutes, every morning. So that's, part of the self-care thing. But, Paddy, can you talk us a little bit about self-care and then the support? And I'll finish off with Stephen then on the support thing.
Yeah, Oisín, and probably, as you spoke about that, it does bring me back to games. I probably was a lot like that when I was younger. I'm not saying, I had a lot of those emotions where losing a game when I was playing football, losing a game was a devastating hit. Losing matches, they ate me up for days, especially if you played poorly. When I started coaching, really it became worse because not only are you carrying your own emotion of losing, you're carrying the emotional loss of the squad of players you're with as well. And especially if you become nearly attached to the players and you feel for them. So there was, for a long number of years, I had really have eaten me up out of those days, those nights I couldn't sleep. We all been there, we don't sleep after a match here. An old, a very experienced manager I used to work with, or a coach, I could ring him at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning after a game, and he'd be sitting watching TV, and I knew guaranteed I couldn't sleep, and I'd ring him as well. Harry goes, you know yourself, that date, he'd be watching the television at 4 in the morning, and he went through the same thing, and this man had been coaching for 40 years. So it does, but what I did learn over time is that I couldn't change that result. There's nothing I could do about that. I had to remember that when the game was over, I had to park it. I'm like yourself, Oisín. There's two young kids. Well, they're one's a teenager now, and one's heading that way. But I had to switch that off and get back into my life as well, because really it is sport. As much as it consumes you when you're involved in it, and you have to understand that there's a time you have to switch off. Now, how do I do that? Well, I take out the frustration on when I go for a run. To clear the head, I use running. It's great too. And it's actually a good friend of yours, Shimmy, who would have been Shimmy McConville,
who's really incidentally getting slower
and losing more hair by the month. But he's getting slower. Well, it was like a Shimmy a few years ago who was big into running. I remember doing a wee bit of chatting him and the importance of running even half an hour every day. So try and go for a run. I play golf. I love playing golf, maybe twice a week. I think it's great. The only person you know is yourself. I'm trying to get the handicap down lower, but it's great. It's competitive and it's clear as a head as well. And then the other thing I do, I just like to meditate. I like to do a bit of meditation as well. I've taken up meditation this last couple of years. I think it's very, very good. Even if it's only first thing in the morning for a while, especially early in the morning, things are quiet around the house. Just sets the tone for the day. And that's the three things I try to do as much as I possibly can, and switch off from the game, because you can't really do much about it. You have to get back to work the next day. It is what it is. You've lost the match. Now you work out, how do I make this better? And that's the thing. There's nothing you can do. The result's over. So but it has taken time. I understand, because it for the first number of years it would have eaten me up. But I've probably got over that stage now where I know there's work to do here, and let's get on with the next time we meet.
Absolutely brilliant, Paddy. Thank you for that. Stephen, just finally on the support thing, where does Stephen Robinson get his support from? When you talked about the tough games, the Celtic games and the Rangers games, and games that probably you're not expected to win, and then there's games that you expect to win and maybe you don't do as well as you did. Who supports you in that regard whenever things like that happen?
Let's see, your family. You pick up the phone to your family, and you're just their son again, or your partner, or your dad, and I've actually got my sons at Motherwell, so we put things into perspective as well. On a Saturday night before lockdown, I flew home almost every Saturday night to see my youngest boy, so I only get maybe 2 days a week with them. So it's important that it would be killing me inside, absolutely killing me if we've got beat, and a million things going through your head. But I think it's important that you give them that time. And we stayed at my sister's, and we had a bit of fun, took him football on the Sunday. And by the time it went from a walk along Jordanstown shore, your head was cleared and your mind was right. And I think as a manager, the biggest thing you have to do on Monday morning, everyone's looking at you. Everyone's looking at your reaction to it. They're wanting to see, are you still upset? Are you still down? Do you still believe in it? And there's a mask you pull down. I'll be honest, there's a mask I pull down. I come across as a really positive, enthusiastic person at times. That may not be how I'm feeling inside on a Monday morning, but the chief executives want to see how I am, how I'm motivating the club still. The staff want to motivate. Everybody wants you to motivate them, and sometimes you say, who motivates a motivator? My kids do. My partner Robin, we go out for a bike ride when we can. We go out for miles, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem so bad. And as Paddy said, you actually can't change what happened. And if you really believe in your system that you've got, and the players that you've got, and the people you have around you, then I think you've got to quickly move on. It's difficult. I won't say I'm great at it. I'm certainly, Paddy sounds a lot better at it than I am. I do it as a mask I pull down. By the time you get in on Monday, I believe in telling the players a story, and you have to believe you by the Saturday to go and win the game, and a story to convince them what you're doing, what your game plan is, how you pick them back up again. The one thing I have got is we put the season and games into small blocks. So we have an overall goal, of course, we want into Europe, we want to stay up, we want to be top 6, whatever it may be. But we go into blocks of I think it's 4 games. We go into blocks of 4 games, and we try and aim for 6 points every block of 4. So when we don't get them, it's not the end of the world. And when we do get them, sometimes we've got 12 points out of the four games. There's blocks we've got 0, and I try and balance that all up and saying it's not that bad. We're not the worst team in the world, or we're not the best team in the world. And I think trying to put a little bit of perspective on it definitely helps. But kids help. Kids help because in reality you're just their dad. You're not this guy in the front of the paper or the back of the paper or on social media. And the bigger thing is, don't read social media. because that could destroy you. So I made a big policy of that, never to read social media, because if you believe the good things that they're right when you're doing well, you certainly have to believe the bad things, and anyone that tells you it doesn't affect them is telling lies. So I don't read it. I try and not take it in, and just try and keep believing in what you're doing.
Brilliant, Stephen. Just to both of you guys, like, you know, word is weight in gold. You know, as a fellow coach, you know, I've learned so much tonight. The honesty thing is a massive thing when dealing with players, when dealing with staff. I suppose, you know, realistic expectations is another thing I've taken away. And I suppose the importance of looking after yourself in the midst of all that. And that's the tough thing for a lot of coaches. And I know there's a lot of gays on here who are interested in that. So thanks again, guys. It's been absolutely brilliant. And thanks to everybody who tuned in and will tune in over the next number of days.